Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. And we have a little bit of a milestone that we're hitting today. Not with my channel, but with the NFL season. We are now 2 weeks away, 14 days away from meaningful Seahawks football. We are 14 days away from a meaningful Seahawks game. And it feels very weird to say that because usually we have the preseason easing us into this stuff. This year we didn't, so it feels like it's just sneaking up on you. It doesn't feel like we're 14 days away from meaningful Seahawk football, but we are. So as we get closer to the season, I'm probably going to make more videos like this because there are some things we have to go into with this team. There are some things we need to discuss in the coming days, and yeah, I just need to get back on my content creating horse before the season actually starts. First item on the list today, one of the dominoes finally fell. Unfortunately, it did not fall in the way I was hoping for. Yannick Ngakoue of the Jacksonville Jaguars has been traded. I wanted the Seahawks to trade for him. Even after we traded for Jamal Adams, I wanted to trade for Yannick. I do not value draft picks in the 2021 draft because it's going to be such a weird college football season. Didn't happen. As of early this morning, the Minnesota Vikings acquired Yannick Ngakoue in a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He will be a Minnesota Viking in 2021. As many people know, I really liked Yannick. I really wanted to try to acquire him. I really wanted to trade for him. I really wanted to give up our second round pick to get him. And I felt like he was a missing piece that was going to make this defense potentially one of the best in the league again if we could get our hands on him. The dream is dead. That was really the primary dream that I still had for this offseason. There are some other things that I wouldn't mind seeing happening, but Yannick was the white whale. We did not catch our white whale. So before we move on, because there's a bigger picture here than just getting Yannick versus not getting Yannick, am I upset at this front office? Because I had said in tweets and in streams that if Yannick Ngakoue got traded to another team for a price tag that I felt the Seahawks could have relatively easily matched or surpassed, I was going to be very disappointed in this front office. So, to address that, the Minnesota Vikings gave Jacksonville their second round pick next year and a conditional fifth round pick in 2022. My understanding is that that fifth round pick is conditional on the Vikings winning the Super Bowl next year, in which case it will go up to a third round pick, which the Vikings are probably not winning the Super Bowl, just statistically speaking. So odds are it's a second round pick and a fifth round pick. Could we have beaten that? My suspicion is probably not. The Vikings' second round pick is more appetizing than ours, and we only have our second round pick next year basically because of all the stuff we gave up to get Jamal Adams. So if the Jaguars had to choose between our second rounder and the Viking second rounder, it makes sense that they would say the Viking second rounder will probably be better, especially when you take into account the fact that if they traded Yannick to us, our team would be better. We would probably be picking lower. And yeah, it seems like they did the best that they possibly could from in terms of us versus the Vikings. And when you throw in that fifth round pick, in order for the Seahawks to have beaten that trade, we probably would have needed to give up either this year's fourth rounder and fifth rounder, or maybe third rounder in 2022. It would have gotten a little murky. So, not upset at the front office for not making this trade. It was not really feasible to beat this offer, in my opinion, mostly because of what we gave up to acquire Jamal Adams, but also the Vikings just have a slightly tastier pick than us right now if you look at the two rosters. So, that's out of the way. Yannick's gone. He's not going to be a Seahawk right now. That's nothing else to talk about. I'm not upset at the front office. I don't think this was a trade offer we could have realistically topped. The question is, with Yannick off the table, are we now in Clowney or bust mode with this team? And latest I heard on Jadeveon Clowney is that he wanted $15 million a year or he wasn't going to play this season, which, by the way, as I've said in streams, makes no sense. He's just going to get less money next year if he doesn't play this year, especially if COVID impacts the salary cap. I have no idea what Clowney is doing. However, that is the situation we find ourselves in right now. He seems to be content with sitting out this season without getting more money. So, can we go into 2020 without Clowney and expect good results? I decided to do some digging. I decided to do some analysis. I decided to check out our pass rush, look at what we lost, look at what we got, and how can it be enough? How can this current slew of defensive players produce enough pass rush in 2020 for us to be good enough? So let's take a look at some of the numbers that I pulled up. So what we have here is a comparison of the 2019 Seahawks pass rush, which was maybe the worst in the league, to the 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers, who had maybe the best pass rush in the league. I could have done this with a few other teams as well, but I just wanted to get a rough idea of what constitutes a great pass rush in the modern NFL. The modern NFL where teams are passing more than ever. The modern NFL where we're seeing more big plays than ever. So, question is, what constitutes a great pass rush in the modern NFL? First, let's take a look at what the Seahawks did in 2019 with their pass rush. As you can see, 28 sacks over 16 regular season games. 28 sacks. This was 31st in the league. The only team with fewer sacks were the Miami Dolphins, who had 23. This comes out to 1.75 sacks a game, so a little less than 2 sacks a game. The 2019 Steelers led the entire NFL in sacks with 54 of them. This comes out to almost 3.5 sacks a game, almost double. So that obviously paints our pass rush in a very negative light, but there's more to a pass rush than just sacks. And I wanted to do some deeper diving into these pass rush stats. So, how many hurries did the 2019 Seahawks have compared to the 2019 Steelers? 60 QB hurries. That's 3.8 hurries per game, nearly 4. So that doesn't seem like that much, just thinking about how many times a team will pass the ball on average throughout the course of a game. However, in this stat, we actually don't compare that badly to maybe the best pass rush in the league last year. The 2019 Steelers only had 70 hurries. That's less than 4.5 per game. So we're not that far off. You could probably find some teams that had a few more hurries, but the main reason why the Steelers didn't have that many hurries is because a lot of their hurries ended in sacks or QB knockdowns. So let's take a look at QB knockdowns. In 2019, the Seahawks had 38. That's less than 2.5 QB knockdowns per game. Not a very high number at all. The Steelers averaged more than 1 extra QB knockdown per game, 3.5, 56 total QB knockdowns. And the number that we're going to focus on here, because this number tries to form an approximation of how good your team was at getting to the quarterback and disrupting him one way or the other. The 2019 Seahawks had 128 total pressures over the course of 16 regular season games. That's 8 pressures a game. If you had to guess, how many times do you think teams on average pass the ball against the Seahawks? How many passing plays do you think opposing teams ran per game? At least 30, maybe 35. You can kind of get the idea of how we weren't really pressuring quarterbacks all that often. The Steelers, on the other hand, had 186. That is 11.6 total pressures per game, over 11.5. And that discrepancy doesn't seem like a ton, but it adds up over the course of a season. They are pressuring quarterbacks nearly 12 times a game. We are only doing it 8. And that is basically the difference between a bottom tier pass rush and a top tier pass rush. So we have work to do, but it seems reasonable to catch up as long as a few players improve. You pick the right players in the draft and free agency, and you basically just have to move a couple pieces around, and you should at least be able to get to a number like 150 or 160. We don't need to be the best pass rush in the league. That's not reasonable, but getting to a number like 150 or 160 doesn't seem like it should be that far off. So let's look at the players that we have had last year, the 2019 Seahawks, and who is staying for the 2020 Seahawks. So I took a look at every player who played on the 2019 Seahawks defense. I counted up how many total pressures that player got over the course of the 2019 season, and I tabulated them here. So running through the list, Rasheem Green, he's kind of the guy that we're betting on the most probably. We need him to improve. He went from only a few pressures as a rookie to 15 in his sophomore season. He's coming back. We need this number to get up closer to 25 to 30 probably if we're going to have a good pass rush this year. Bobby Wagner will be back. He had 6 QB pressures last year, which was actually a fairly high number for him. Hopefully he can maintain something around that. Trey Flowers is coming back. He had 2 QB pressures last year. Jaron Reed is the other guy we're probably betting on heavily coming back from 2019 going into 2020. He only played in 10 games last year, did not play that well, did not play as much as we wanted him to, and still had 13 total QB pressures. If that number could double, then maybe we're going to have something. Brandon Jackson also back, although already seriously injured. I don't know if he's going to play this year. I don't know if he's fine. I don't know if he's going to be out for a little bit. Regardless, he is back for the moment. He had 7 pressures last year. I think he's pretty well capped out at a number like this. He's just not got a lot of upside to him, but he is back, and he did have 7 pressures last year. Poona Ford also back, 4 pressures last year. Can he take his game up another notch? We'll see if he has it in him. KJ Wright back with his 1 total pressure last year. Every little bit counts, man. Delano Hill also back, 1 pressure last season. Cody Barton, a player who seems like a likely candidate to improve if he can get on the field, which remains to be seen. He had 2 pressures last year. Shaquem Griffin, another promising candidate for improvement next year, or excuse me, now this year, had 5 pressures in very limited playing time last year, and he made a little bit of noise in the playoffs as well. There's reason to hope. And finally, Brian Monet, back for the 2020 season, had 1 pressure last year. So this list of players who are returning from 2019 constitutes 57 total QB pressures. Now let's take a look at what we have thus far lost. And the answer is we've lost a substantial amount. Quentin Jefferson, who in 14 games last year accumulated 16 total pressures. We lost him to Buffalo. He will be missed. Michael Kendricks, I'm personally happy he's gone because I don't think he's very good, but he did have 5 QB pressures in about 12 games last year. Jadeveon Clowney, this is the name we're going to come back to a little later, but he is certainly the biggest loss so far this offseason. He played only 13 games, played through an injury, and some of them still had 30 total pressures, which pretty easily led the whole team. Those 30 pressures are now waiting in free agency. Ezekiel Anza, as disappointing as a player as he was, 10 pressures in 2019. He is now still waiting in free agency. Al Woods gone in free agency. I think he signed with the Bengals, had 5 total pressures last season. Bradley McDougald traded to the Jets, had 4 total pressures, and Akeem King not re-signed, had 1 pressure. So more than half, 71 of our total pressures last season, 71 of 128 are gone, are on other teams, or are in free agency. So you can see how we lost a lot of our bad pass rush last year. The bad pass rush that we had was bolstered by a few people, and those people are by and large gone. So that's a little hairy, but what are we bringing in? What have we brought in so far? So here are the new additions to this defense. LJ Collier, who is technically not a new addition, but he may as well have redshirted in 2019, so we're going to say he's new. He did absolutely nothing in terms of pressuring the quarterback last year. Can he pick up even 10 to 15 pressures this year? That's a big deal. Alton Robinson, rookie, playing really well in camp. He looks really promising so far. A lot of positive buzz around Alton Robinson. He's obviously a guy who was not even in the NFL last year. Could he chime in with some pressures? DeMarcus Christmas was on the team last year, I believe, but did not play hardly at all. So he's likely to get some more playing time this year because we don't have Quentin Jefferson anymore. could he throw a few pressures onto the barbecue? Benson Mayowa, one of the free agent additions this offseason. We've had him before. He had a pretty decent season last year in Oakland with 15 total pressures. If he could come in and do something similar, that would be very welcome. Darrell Taylor, a second-round rookie, already got injured. I am personally somewhat pessimistic on his chances of contributing significantly as a rookie for multiple reasons, but it's nothing against the player, and he probably will have at least a few pressures over the course of the season. But if he could surprise and have a really effective season, then that's a happy surprise that this team really needs right now. Jordan Brooks, obviously our first round rookie this year, an outside linebacker, seems like he's going to get on the field at least some. Can he throw in a few QB pressures over the course of the season? And finally, the two biggest additions in terms of trying to bolster the pass rush, Bruce Irvin, who had a really nice year last year for the Panthers, 23 total pressures. If he could do something like that here, that would wipe away a lot of our concerns, I think. And finally, Jamal Adams, who last year as a Jet, even though he played safety, had 16 total pressures. That's as much or more than every Seahawk in 2019 except for Clowney. Wow. So, of the three players who actually have significant NFL experience prior to this season, we see the additions combined for 54 total pressures. It still doesn't get up to the 71 we lost, but the question is, can we get that remainder plus some out of the new guys? Can LJ Collier throw in a few? Can Darrell Taylor throw in a few? Can Jordan Brooks surprise us? We could get up to 71 here if a few of these new players just show up a little bit. But we don't want to get to where we were last year. We want to get better. So the way I see it, Rasheem Green needs to get significantly better. This number of 15 total pressures needs to get up to about 25 or 30. Jerron Reed, same thing. And then we need to see one of these two rookies, Alton Robinson and Darrell Taylor, have an impact this year. And we need to see some of the guys here maintain their current levels of production. Brandon Jackson, not really a good player. 7 pressures last year. We need to see something similar from him this year if he gets playing time. Shaquem Griffin had 5 pressures last year. We need to see that number get closer to 10 or 15. But as I look at this, as I look at these numbers, as I look at what the best pass rush in the league, the Steelers, had last year compared to what we had, this feels doable. It doesn't seem like it's going to be easy. We need a lot of things to go our way. We need our secondary, which should be elite, to hold up and play really well to give the pass rush extra opportunities to get to the quarterback. We need the scheme to work, and we need some of these players to just be, I think, a little bit better than we're giving them credit for right now. But it seems like it's possible. So, my answer right now to are we in Jadeveon Clowney or bust mode for this 2020 season? The answer is not necessarily, but I would certainly feel much better if we brought him in between now and when the season starts. However, I did want to present kind of an alternative way to look at things. If you're pessimistic on us bringing in Clowney like I am, then looking at these numbers, you can pretty easily move things around and come up with a way for us to get to 150 to 160 pressures. If Green and Reed can combine for 60 and Shaquem can get us up to 75, we're about half of the way there. Then we just need some of the veterans we brought in, like Bruce Irvin, Jamal Adams, and Benson Mayowa, to combine for maybe, 40 or 50. And then we should just be able to get there with a handful of stragglers. It's a lot to ask. I'm not super confident in it. I would feel better if we brought in Clowney, but I will say this. If the Seahawks bring in Clowney between now and the start of the season, there could be something surprisingly effective in this pass rush if you take a look at all the sum of these parts. The sum of these parts might fit together well enough to have 160 QB pressures this year. And with the secondary that we should have and with the offense that we will hopefully have, that should be good enough for us to win a lot of games. All right. What do you guys think? Is this enough? Is this group of players that I have on my screen enough? Is the offseason good as it is? Or do we need to bring in the last piece of significance that we could add to this pass rush to make things significantly better? Do we need to bring in Jadeveon Clowney? Who do you see breaking out among the players who we have going into 2020 for the pass rush? Do you like any of the returning players from last year? Do you like some of the new players? What do you think? All right, 20-minute video. That's good for today. I'm out. Go Hawks. And the Yannick dream is dead, but let's be a little optimistic here. Peace.